Welcome to the Dixie Belle YouTube channel. My name is Amy and I'm from the channel Flip It Furniture. Today we're gonna make over this small dresser using chalk mineral paint and a furniture transfer. For a list of all the products I use in this video and where to buy them, be sure to check out the description down below. Now let's flip it. I'm using Dixie Belle's White Lightning Cleaner to clean down my piece. I already have it mixed up in my spray bottle. I remove all the hardware so I can continue scrubbing down the drawer fronts. Once I finish cleaning the piece, I take a cloth dampened with water and I just wipe down the piece to make sure there's no cleaner residue left on it. My next step is going to be to prime the piece. This top is really shiny. I think it's a laminate top, so I'm going to use Dixie Belle Slick Stick, and I apply 2 coats of the Slick Stick onto the top, waiting 2 hours in between coats, and then I wait overnight to add the paint. While cleaning the piece, I noticed an odor, so I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Boss in Clear. I give it a good shaking and stirring, and then I add 2 coats. I wait for the coats to dry in between each other, but I add a nice thick layer of this Boss. It's an odor blocker. It also blocks stains and tannins, but in this case, I'm using it for the odors. The Dixie Belle Boss has a matte feel to it, so it does add a little bit of texture, but it's not very noticeable. And since it does have the odor, this is pretty much my best option for the insides of the drawers. But not only do I do the insides of the drawers, I do the bottom, the outside, the sides of the drawers, and then I just cover the entire piece, including the top that I just slick sticked. You can add both primers because they both serve 2 different purposes. The Slick Stick is for the shiny surfaces so that the paint will adhere properly, and then the Boss is for the odors. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm locking in those odors. For the top, I want to add a 2-tone effect, so my base color is going to be Hurricane Gray. I give it a nice little scuff sanding before I begin, just to make sure that there was no hair or pieces of dust or anything left on my piece. I want it to be nice and smooth. Then I use my water mister. I wet down my brush and I wet down the piece, and then I'm going to add 1 light layer of the Hurricane Gray. And once it's dry, I wait about an hour, and then I add my second coat of Hurricane Gray just to get that full coverage. Once my base coat is dry, I mix up a wash using Fluff. Fluff is a really beautiful white with a cool undertone. I use 4 scoops of Fluff, and then I cover it with enough water. I would say it's almost a 50-50 ratio. When applying my wash, I go in rows. I do 1 section, 1 row at a time. I just apply the wash, and then I take my nice rag. It's a microfiber cloth, it's lint free, and I wipe back. This is my favorite cloth to use to wipe back the wash. I follow this procedure until the top is covered. I add a total of 3 coats of the wash. I wait for it to dry about an hour in between each coat. Once my third coat has dried, I add 2 coats of my satin clear coat. I wait about 2 hours in between the coat. So just to do the top of this piece, it does take me about an entire day. But it's well worth it because it comes out so beautiful every time I do this technique. The satin top coat is what makes this really special. It almost tones down the brightness just a teeny tiny bit, just enough, but it makes it look smooth and just really rich and beautiful. I've used this technique with a couple of different colors now. I've used it with caviar and chocolate, that's also so beautiful. I've used it with driftwood and drop cloth, that's another beautiful combination. The color combos are endless. There's so many possibilities and the results are truly gorgeous. Now for the front and the sides of the dresser, I'm gonna use Dixie Belle's Dusty Blue, and I'm gonna use my water mister and my Dixie Belle Mini to apply it. Now here you can see I have the drawers in. When I am finished with the piece, I do take the drawers out. I have them in right now because I'm gonna do some blending and it's kind of necessary to have the drawers in. But once I'm finished with that, I do take it out and do any touch-ups that I need, you know, on this part just to make sure that everything is covered. This is only my first coat, keep in mind. So whatever I do now, I'm actually gonna do the same exact thing on the second coat. So here I'm just creating the outline and I'm gonna work on one side and then I'll go over to the next side when I finish. The second color I'm using is Savannah Mist. If you are new to blending or you have a hard time, I highly recommend these 2 colors. They're extremely beginner friendly and they look absolutely gorgeous together. So the center of the piece is going to be entirely Savannah Mist and then it's going to blend out into the Dusty Blue. Now, as you can see, I just brought that Savannah Mist straight up to the Dusty Blue. I'm bringing it almost to the outer edges, and then I give it a nice spritz with my water, and then I take the Dusty Blue brush, and I start bringing that Dusty Blue down into the Savannah Mist. But the colors are so close to each other that they blend so easily. Now here I go with a dry brush and I'm just refining my blend. There's some brush strokes and things, so I just feather it out. And then right here I had to go back because I noticed a little bit of dripping and I didn't like that. So I grabbed my Savannah Mist and I just added a little bit more and I wanted to bring that up a little bit more. But quickly I go back to my dry brush and then I just refine the blend with the dry brush. I use a light hand for this. I'm not pressing really hard with the dry brush. I'm just blending to make sure that you don't know when one color stops and when other color begins. And I follow the same technique for both sides of the dresser. I'm using the Dusty Blue on the outside and the Savannah Mist on the inside. I go back and forth with my brushes blending until I like the way that it looks, and then I always go back with my dry brush and just make sure that there's no harsh lines, that everything looks really good, there's no brush strokes. The dry brush just smooths everything out. Now for the centerpiece, I'm using the Bohemian Wedding Transfer. It's a gorgeous furniture transfer by Bells and Whistles. I think that I particularly picked these blues to go with this transfer, and I loved that the light part was in the middle so that we can accentuate the transfer in the center. So So I'm using the centerpiece, and then I'll use a couple just like little accent flowers on the bottom and then the top. So I decide my placement. I take it from the backing paper and then I stick it where I want it to go. And for this, I kind of just messed with the transfer a lot because I wanted it to be centered. This center drawer here is kind of funky with the little indent in the middle. So I started there just to make sure that it was going to be in the indent exactly where it should be. And then when I add the second half of it, I have to kind of match it into that center. So I'm using the brush that they provide in the tube just to rub it on that part. And then I kind of felt uncomfortable, so I decided to go from the other side to get it off. So the transfer is actually sticking onto the piece. I'm rubbing it onto the piece. So once I have the transfer placed on everywhere I want it to be, I use a burnishing pad and I just start to rub over the transfer. And this is to make sure that there's no air bubbles stuck in there. This is to get the halo off of the piece, which is just like this little ring around the transfer. If you rub, that little ring will disappear. Mostly disappear. Some spots you can still see it, but it's not very noticeable. It's just part of the transfer. And then once I finish that, I'm going to use the clear coat in satin again to seal my transfer and to seal the entire piece. And I add 2 coats of clear coat to the entire bottom of the piece. And I always wait 2 hours in between the coats before I add another coat. And for this particular piece, I did end up swapping out the old hardware for some new hardware, which I think really made it just so beautiful. And you'll see by the end. And here's a reminder of what we had before, and here it is today. I must say, the blues with this furniture transfer, I just love them together. The transfer is stunning. I hope you enjoyed this makeover, and I will see you next time.